Welcome back to Face to Face. I'm John Ralston. We're talking to Chuck Kozak. He's a Northern Nevada attorney who's running for the Republican nomination against Harry Reid, the Senate Majority Leader, who's not running for the nomination to take on Harry Reid. All right, I want to talk a little bit about your economic policies more. You did speak at the now closed Integrity dealership down here when you announced your candidacy, and you said you want to do that to focus on what you called the economic bomb, which failed policy has brought to our state. And here's what you said about President Obama, and, excuse me, and the man you call his chief deputy, our own Harry Reid. Here's what Chuck Kozak said. There is no form of failure they will not subsidize, no irresponsible behavior they will not bail out. Now, here's what I find kind of ironic about where you announced. You know why Integrity closed? It closed because Chrysler filed bankruptcy. So if we had bailed them out, then you wouldn't have been able to say what you said there, right?
Well, bailing them out isn't my idea of how we get back on our feet economically. What you have to do is have that flat 15% tax rate so that the economy has a chance to work through. And if they're inefficient and they're not doing what they need to do to be economically viable, yes, they will be closed down.
Well, we can talk about the flat tax if you'd want, which has been proposed before. It's not a Chuck Kozak idea, but in the short run, there's two choices essentially they had: bail out a company or let it go bankrupt. Chrysler went bankrupt. That's why they changed. That's why that dealership you announced that closed. So aren't you trying to have it both ways? I want the private sector to take control. Let this happen. Ronald Reagan would have said that. On the other hand, here you are sitting there. Look at this economic bomb that dropped on here. Yeah, what economic bomb?
The economic bomb was created by the bad lending policies and the easy money policies of the Bush administration and later the Obama administration. That's what caused the economic bomb. What happened after that is, I contend they should have put these places into receivership and let them work through it that way. Not bailouts. Not bailouts of General Motors. Not bailouts of Chrysler. No.
All I'm asking, and then we'll move on to something else, is if you're going to say, look, there's an economic bomb that dropped here, and that's why this Integrity dealership where I'm announcing is closed. The economic bomb that dropped on Chrysler is the government refused to help them.
Well, no. The economic bomb that dropped on Chrysler was they had exceptional debt because of their union pension funds and so forth that they had to fund, and international competition was undercutting them because they weren't unionized, and so eventually they just were not economically viable. So what are we going to do? Run in and bail them out because they're not economically viable?
Is there? It's interesting because I wonder what you're saying here. Is there any circumstance under which the government should step in and bail out a company, and if so, what would those circumstances be?
I don't see any, unless it's an industry that we absolutely need for our national defense. But I think every time you step in and do something like that, although it seems like the humane thing to do, the unintended consequences far outweigh the good that you accomplish.
I'm not even sure it's a question of humanity. Let's talk about the banks. I mean, are you saying that they shouldn't have stepped in and saved these banks? Because, you know, there are a lot of people who think there would have been an economic cataclysm if those banks had not been saved. You don't agree with that?
No. This is a complex issue, but what you have to realize is Paulson pushed the panic button. He had a lot of tools available to him other than running into the president and asking him for $787 billion.
That's the former Treasury Secretary for Bush you're referring to now.
That's right.
I think you have more criticism today for the Bush administration than Obama, by the way.
Well, I certainly criticize that. I mean, he had the tools. He had the Fed. He had the Treasury Department. He could have handled that much differently rather than set off an economic panic. The SEC could have overruled the mark-to-market accounting rules, which would have ameliorated the situation enormously. Instead, everything went into free fall because of the mark-to-market accounting system. So there were a lot of things that Paulson could have done as a sophisticated regulator that he just didn't do, and he just pushed the panic button, and then that's why the bomb fell.
The SEC is a regulatory body. I thought you didn't like regulatory bodies. Maybe we should just get rid of the SEC.
Well, I think a lot of these regulatory bodies could be pared down. I'm not saying we have to do away with them entirely. But I am saying when Paulson got into that situation, he could have handled it a lot differently, and the results would have been a lot better for everybody.
And I actually admire you for saying that they should have done something differently, even back in the Bush days. What exactly should they have done? I mean, the economy was people said you have to do something. Paulson advised them to do something. A lot of people had similar kinds of advice. What should they have done? Should they have done nothing?
No. What Paulson should have done is arranged quietly for a line of credit with the Congress and with the Treasury to make sure that these depositors were all backed up and that the banks weren't suddenly thrust into a situation where they had to sell all of their securitized mortgages. When he forced them to do that, there was no market for these mortgages because it marked to market accounting, which said they're worth nothing.
They're toxic at that point,
That's right. So that now you're just feeding into this frenzy and this panic worldwide. And that's where Paulson dropped the ball. He could have done a much better job using the regulatory agencies that he had at his disposal to cushion all that and to keep a lot of it confidential.
Do you think that would have stopped the downturn in the economy? That would have stopped the Dow from plummeting down into the 6,000s?
Yes, I do. I think it would certainly have been a much softer landing. It wouldn't have been the panic that we saw. Yes.
Okay. All right. Big issue that's before Congress right now is health care reform. You have some feelings on that, too. We'll be back to talk to Chuck Kozak about health care reform when Face to Face returns.